there's a lot to do around fire data, and I previously made a couple years ago this live wildfires map, which I talk about too much for the LA Times, but what kind of really stuck with me from that was how inaccessible some of the fire data is, and also how we actually, like we being anyone, but can deliver this information to users in a timely manner. A lot of feedback I got from folks on the map, even, you know, I still stay in touch with this one guy that I talked to, was, you know, how can we tell somebody if there's a fire near them? Like, how do we know, like, there's no set up way to get alerts about any kind of disaster, really. Well, in this type, in California anyway. And so this is something that, like, I've thought a lot about, and this is by no means a perfect solution, but it is something that I think starts to get at, like, the beginning of the problem of, like, how could we address something like this? I've seen a lot of amazing talks today. This one is maybe more location based than, like, actually map based. There are maps in it, I promise. But I'm interested to hear after all of this what y'all think and your ideas and how, you know, we can improve something like this. So what is it? I, you know, gave this whole speech. It's a MMS-based alert system for fires within a certain, like, radius of a location that's been picked. So users can sign up for the service online via a form that I'll show you, and you can receive a text message with information about the fire and a map of where the fire is in relation to the location that they provided. So I have mine set up for, like, really far, so I can make sure that it's working all the time. But typically it's between 20 and, like, 100 miles that folks have set up, and I have, I don't know, more than a handful, but not a lot of people using it. So why did I create it? I created it because people asked for it. It's really, like I said, just based on location, so I think that there's a lot of improvement, like, in various ways that could be done, but I really think that it's something that should exist in some form, at least some kind of, like, location-based alert system, and this is my first stab at, like, how do we kind of address something like that. So a little bit about how it works. It's a pretty simple app. There's a page showing current fires that have started within the last 24 hours, and then there's, like, a little tab where you can click sign up for alerts, and you fill out this little form. I tried to make it as simple as I possibly could, where you put in your name, that's just for me for the database. Phone number is really important, and address is really important, and then there's, like, a default distance if you don't pick one, but it kind of shows you where you've picked and how far you can go. So I hope this is still connected. So, like, if I were to say, this happened to me yesterday, so it's probably not going to work, but, well, trust me that it does work, and you'll end up signing up, and then, basically, you'll see as a user something like this on the right. You'll get a text message like that. And how this works is, I have a flow chart that I'll show you in a second, but basically when you hit that form, it sends your data to a DynamoDB instance where I store all the user data, and then all of, like, the live fire data is stored in S3, as well as some maps that I capture using Playwright that are then the ones that are sent to the user. I'm not supposed to do that because it's against terms of service, but don't tell anybody. I use Github Actions to gather the data and trigger the alert sending, and it kind of, like, manages all the pieces of this project. The data comes from NIFC. If you've done anything with fire data, you've heard of NIFC. It's I can never remember what it stands for. It's the National Interagency Fire Center. Primarily uses this data set, which is the last 24-hour wildland fire locations. However, I personally don't think that this is comprehensive enough because I never really saw the fires in here appear in, like, the larger data sets for, like, currently burning fires, which leads me to believe that some things are not quite making it in there. So I have since then, I still use this data set, but also pulled in new fires from some of the other data sets. This is kind of an example of a snapshot, literally, of, like, what the database looks like. It kind of has, like, the coordinates of where the person put in, and then as well as, like, what active alerts are attached to that person right now. So it's not like a super intelligent project. It kind of just says, okay, what exists now? Here are all the matching alerts, and did I already send one? Yes, I already sent one, don't do it again. These are some maps that I have saved. I have thousands of them now. And the front end is a simple React app to handle the map, and it's a pretty generic form, as you saw. So this is my, this is still my whiteboard at home, but like kind of my messy diagram. I apologize, but it's easier for me to do it this way than it is for me to try and do it in some kind of program, but like of the flow of how this works. And so we have like Github Actions that goes and gets all this stuff and does like multiple things where it sends things to S3 and saves them forever until I delete them. And then that goes to the map. And then the map is in the website of things where also that sign up form exists, which is hooked up to the database where the users are saved. And then as the GitHub Actions run through the various types of things I asked them to do, they check on what the current fires are, if the alerts have been sent, and then ultimately, if they haven't been sent, make a map and send it. So this is pretty short. I don't have like a ton I want to delve into here. I just kind of, this is a problem I think about a lot. And like, this is my first stab at kind of like, how could we approach this? And I would love to talk to all of you about any thoughts you have. Like, I think that more people thinking about this, the more likely we're to come up with something that's going to be useful. So, I mean, to start, I know that like providing more data about the fire to the user would be helpful, and also maybe ways to like make it smarter. Like, what other kind of information could be used to determine if a fire is a threat to a location rather than just distance. So I'm open to suggestions. I'd love to talk in person while I'm here, but also feel free to DM or tweet at me. And if you want to check it out, that's the GitHub, well, that's the link to the project. That's it. Yeah, I'm down, sure, yeah. So,
despite what I previously said, we do have time for questions for Casey.
I kept it short. So.
I'll start. Have you considered adding wind data?
So yes and no. I was actually talking to people about this yesterday. I know that wind data is important, and I could add wind data, but I don't have the skills personally, like to model like I can't tell you how that would affect the fire necessarily. I could say the wind is blowing this direction, which if people think that's useful, I would be more than happy to add. But like, I don't want to make a judgment on something that I don't know about. If that makes sense?
Love the presentation and what you're doing. Just a quick question. Is it possible to incorporate fire evacuation orders and zones into this? You're nodding, so you've heard that.
I am very passionate about fire evacuation zones, and that is like probably my current biggest fixation. It's not in there right now, and it's not in there right now because it's really hard to regulate, meaning that unlike the fire data that I showed you, kind of, it doesn't all come from one place. It's really hard to gather, and all the sources are mostly crap. And so trying to kind of set up, my dream is to set up something that would like ingest all types of fire evac zones, and by that I mean like that you could drop a PDF in, or you could drop an SVG or anything, and it would like kind of like be smart enough to like put them all on one map, which is a really big undertaking because of what I've learned about how you find them. But ideally, yes, I would love to do that. I think that is ultimately one of the most important things in terms of how fires relate to people, and I would love to do something like that.
Thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering, have you reached out to anyone in government or explored any types of government partnerships, private-public partnerships?
Admittedly, since this is relatively new, I haven't with this project. I have emailed and talked to a few folks about like verifying data sources and like making sure that it's like this shows what I think it shows, right? Like, and so I have been in contact with them, and I also, when I have made some of these maps in the past, learned a lot about the data sets from them, but I haven't approached them in that kind of way in terms of like could we actually partner on something? Based on my experience with working with government, not the people, but the governments in the past, I find that it would be unlikely that they'd be willing to do something like that, but it might be worth asking. You were definitely correct. Well, thank you all, and I look forward to talking to you.